Hello and welcome to the third episode of the Quarantine Report. Now today we're going to talk about something which is extremely important at the moment, and that is lies, damn lies and statistics. Something we are being bombarded with all the time at the moment. Now let me give you an example of how statistics can be used to distort the picture we see. Now, which country in the world has the most Nobel laureates, Nobel Prize winners per head of population? Now, you might think it might be America, it might be Britain, could be France, maybe Germany. No, none of those. The answer is the Faroe Islands. Now, what's going on in the Faroe Islands, which means they've won more Nobel Prizes than any other country per head of population? Well, not a lot. They've had one winner, which shows you how statistics can be used to sort of distort the image. So the statistic we'll all be seeing a lot is the infection rate and the death rate. Now these two are incredibly important. If we look at the current charts of statistics, the country that has suffered the most in terms of both infections and deaths is the United States. At the time of recording, currently around 22,000 deaths. Now what's important about this is to know that it's not the full picture. And the reason it's not the full picture is because the infection rate statistics we have and the death rate statistics we have are entirely dependent on the country in question. So the United States has been conducting lots of tests and is very transparent with its information. So the top three countries for infection rate and death rate are the United States, as we've previously mentioned, Spain and Italy. Now, unsurprisingly, we have three Western countries at the top of this chart. The reason this is unsurprising is because, as I said, the three of them have conducted fairly extensive testing. They are transparent with their information and willing to share their information. Now, the true number of deaths and infections in other countries can be a bit of a mystery. Let's look at the country that is behind the outbreak of this virus in the first place. In fact, the country whose name is attached to the virus, the Chinese coronavirus. And let's see how they've recorded their information. Now, if we were to be fools and take their word for their statistics, they are way down in the charts, both in terms of infection rates and death rates. However, we know since the beginning of this outbreak that they have been lying non-stop about their statistics. First and foremost, let's talk about the opening of Wuhan, the so-called opening of Wuhan. So apparently there are no new cases in Wuhan. The Chinese methods have been effective and we can all learn from them. Except that's rubbish. What they have been doing is simply not testing people. If you don't test people, you get no new cases. Very simple formula which China has been following. So people in hospitals in China who show potential symptoms of coronavirus are simply not being given the tests because the government knows that it will distort the picture. Another thing they're trying to do in terms of recording deaths is make sure that people who they suspect do have coronavirus are listed as dying from other things, such as pneumonia or other lung conditions. Since the outbreak of the virus, China has been continually and deliberately distorting the statistics available to the world. And as the CIA conclude, they don't actually know what the true nature of either the infections or the death rate is. They are deliberately keeping it quiet, both on the ground, from low-ranking officials, going all the way to the highest ranks of the Communist Party. Honest reporting from China would be almost impossible, as Xi Jinping and the Communist Party have put out the narrative that China is beating the coronavirus. China is winning. And so if that's the party line, the blessed party line in China, there's no way anyone could contradict it. No one could ever say that actually areas that claim to be free from the virus are not free, and no one could say that the death rate is not dropping because it couldn't contradict this divine mandate coming from Beijing. What we can say with almost certainty is that the United States does not have the most either infections or deaths in the world. It is almost certainly China. One interesting point that has been coming out of China is reporting about lots of funeral urns that would carry the ashes of bodies that have been distributed, particularly in Wuhan, thousands of urns. Now, this isn't scientific, however, it is an indication that the death rate is considerably higher than what the Communist Party is reporting. Various people have tried to make estimates as to what the true infection rate and the death rate is. Some people have suggested the infection rate could be over 1 million. The death rate is another thing that is difficult to calculate or estimate, but some estimates suggest it could be 50,000 and others say it could even be as high as 100,000. However, we would have no way of knowing because of the wall of propaganda that is coming out of China. Another country whose death and infection rate is considerably higher than what they're reporting is Iran. If you remember, in the early days of the Chinese coronavirus, Iran was widely reported on as many high-ranking officials were infected as well as the general population. Like with China, we can only estimate what Iran's true infection rate and death rate is. And the wider lesson from this is we need to be very skeptical of statistics coming out of authoritarian countries. They have a vested interest in making sure their numbers are lower than it seems, both for their own prestige and for their own economies and other people trading with them. Even when looking at the statistics within Western countries, the national statistics do not give the complete picture. So take the United States. So if you look at deaths per million people, the United States number is fairly low. It's only around 60. And that's because the United States has such a huge population, being over 300 million. However, if you were to look at New York State specifically, the number is much higher. The number is 482 per million people, as this is the absolute epicenter of the Chinese coronavirus in America, demonstrating that one blanket statistic doesn't give you the complete picture. Now, another statistic to bear in mind is the response to the Chinese coronavirus. Now, China itself has been trying to portray itself as the benevolent benefactor who is helping the world overcome this great disaster. So if you see statistics like China is sending several thousand tests or several thousand personal protective equipment items to these countries, be very skeptical. Listen to this. In Spain, 58,000 tests were returned to China because they were proved to only have a 30% accuracy rate. With the accuracy rate of 30%, it's totally useless. There is no point in even using it. You would literally be better off tossing a coin. Now, Spain is not alone. The Netherlands has returned 600,000 kits, and Australia has seized 800,000 as they are known to be faulty, defective. One of the most galling examples of China's so-called benevolence is when they sent personal protective equipment to Italy. Now, on the face of it, this looks like a very generous offer. However, when you dig a little deeper, you find out that this equipment that China was sending to Italy had actually been sent by Italy to China in the early days of the crisis. And now China is charging Italy to get their equipment back. So making a huge amount of money from the crisis that they caused. So, in conclusion, lies, damn lies, and statistics are everywhere. One statistic alone doesn't tell you the whole picture. Now, we must be incredibly skeptical of authoritarian countries, mentioning no names, China, and what they're releasing. And even in Western countries, be aware of what the limitations are of what the statistics can truly tell you. Thank you for tuning into the Quarantine Report again. Remember to like, subscribe, and comment, ask questions. I would, as always, love to hear from all of you.